Hello, I'm David Beckmann. I'm the president of Bread for the World, and I want to talk a little bit about the world hunger crisis. Last week I went to Rome for a big international meeting on this crisis, and I came back aware that the situation is even worse than I thought. Prices for food, especially for the basic grains that poor people mainly eat, those prices have all gone up dramatically. So there are a lot of people who maybe spend 2/3 of their income on rice who are suddenly facing rice prices that are 100% higher than they were just about a year ago. The prices of rice, wheat, corn, sorghum, all the basic grains have gone up, and it's most of the bottom billion people in the world, even people who live in rural areas, buy some of their food. So all those people have been hard hit by higher food prices. And then there may be 100 million people who used to be not hungry, but because of high food prices are now going hungry. The scale of the damage that's been done is just hard to imagine. And then there are about 35 low-income, food deficit countries. And on the plane on the way back from Rome, I was reading reports on this, and those countries had their food import costs go up by $30 billion between 2006 and 2007, probably at least another $30 billion between 2007 and 2008. So these are countries like Ethiopia. In those governments, they couldn't, in many cases, they didn't want to just pass these high food prices on to people because they knew people would starve and riot. So a lot of these countries, poor countries, regulate prices, subsidize prices. They're also dealing with fuel prices. A lot of the same countries are facing huge increases in fuel prices, and again, the governments take part of the hit, the people take part of the hit. So the scale of the damage is hard to imagine, and nobody knows, but these food prices have increased for various reasons. Most people think that they'll come down a little bit, but that they will remain substantially higher than they have been in the past. So the difficulty is going to last for a long time. I think the UN, the World Bank, some of the governments, our own government, are taking some steps to try to help. But I came back from the conference in Rome feeling that the response so far is just not close to being commensurate with the problem. This is like the onset of the AIDS epidemic in developing countries at the end of the 80s. I think people haven't really figured out yet how damaging this is going to be. Now, the world has been making progress against hunger, poverty, and disease. I think poor people are coping. Poor governments are going to cope. I'm still optimistic that we're going to figure out a way to move forward against poverty despite the world hunger crisis, but it really is a crisis. Then just recently, the government of Ethiopia announced that they need to try to seek more assistance because Ethiopia is dealing with these high prices for food and fuel. People have already maxed out their coping strategies, and now they have drought. And I think that's going to, my guess is that that's going to happen in a number of poor countries where people they've already sold their goat, they've already pulled their girls out of school. They're eating one meal a day, not two. And then there's going to be bad weather or violence or something else, and so I think we're going to see a series of severe humanitarian crises with famine-like conditions. I hope not, but that's how I'm viewing the problem. Bread for the World is urging Congress and the President to respond ambitiously and strategically. There's a a supplemental appropriation bill in Congress right now that would get an extra about $2 billion, mostly for food aid, but some money to invest in agriculture in poor countries. That's important. And then I think going forward we're going to have to push to just get a much bigger response and a smarter response than what the world is putting together so far. To keep track of what's happening with this global hunger crisis and the parallel increase of hunger and poverty in the United States, you can go to Bread for the World's website, which is www.bread.org. This is a rapidly changing situation. Clearly, part of what needs to happen is that our government needs to be responsive and on top of this situation. And that's only going to happen if people like you stay informed, get informed, include this crisis in your prayers, and then contact your member of Congress and let your member of Congress know that you're aware that something big has happened in the world and in our own country, and you want this to move to the top of the agenda.